Let me know if you can hear me. I think I fixed my microphone. So, well, hi everyone. I'm Susan Blum. I'm back again, and this is my first time using Be Live. It's a new software for me, and I really hope I got it working. So, if somebody can just tell me, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yay! Okay. I had to go into the settings for Be Live. Okay, we're back. We can hear me. Yay. All right. We can get started now. Phew. This is great. Well, welcome. I'm Susan Blum. For those of you who watched the Arthritis Summit, you got to see me. You got to listen to me, talk to all of my colleagues and friends about about arthritis. And you learned a whole lot, I hope. And for those of you who did not get to, thank you for everybody telling me you can hear me now. So I'm very excited. We're good to go. So I had the idea to follow up with the summit, with doing a question and answer session, because I got so many questions. Everyone kept emailing me through my website. You can always email me. You know, I have a website at blumhealthmd.com, and we have a support button, and it goes into our funnel, and my coach mans it, and she forwards emails to me. So we answer questions all the time. And so I was getting a lot of questions from everybody from the summit, and we had the idea to just sort of have me just do question and answer sessions for a couple of weeks, and we'll see how it goes. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad to have you here. So we sent out an email, and some of you might have actually responded and sent in questions. And we said, send us questions, and I'll answer them on a Q&A session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top. I have it's about 50 questions. So I don't know I'm going to get to them all today. But I'll go until about 8:45, let's say. We'll do a good solid half hour of questions and answers. And I'm going to just start answering some of your questions, and hopefully it'll answer a lot of the questions you have. And if you don't hear it, you can certainly, I can see comments too as we're going, and we can have a little dialogue. So again, welcome. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you all about arthritis. Now, arthritis, you know, I didn't really give my own talk in the summit. I interviewed a lot of people. I tried to get everything out of them that I wanted them to share with you. But arthritis is the leading cause of disability in the United States. And it's not just an older folks disease. It's, you know, about 30% of people between 45 and 65 have doctor-diagnosed arthritis. And so at the end of the day, how are we going to treat arthritis? And it turns out that what the research is telling us for the past 5 years, exploding in the literature, is that the pain in your joints is the pain you're feeling. The inflammation is starting somewhere else in your body. Okay, so you're feeling it in your joints, but it's a systemic illness. The pain you're feeling is coming from somewhere else. And so the question is, how do we find and treat the root causes of the inflammation? And that's what I talk about in my book, and that's what I tried to teach you in the summit. And so I want to go to one of the first questions that came in, and one of the questions said, in the plant paradox, Dr. Gundry makes the case for lectins and microorganism lipopolysaccharides as causative in autoimmunity arthritis. What's my opinion? Great question. And so here's the thing. You know, we talked a lot. I had a whole day in the summit dedicated to the gut, right, and the gut microbiome. And so there's a whole section of I did a lot of research for arthritis and for my book, really understanding what's going on in the gut. And and I agree with Dr. Gundry, because one of the mechanisms we're learning now, this isn't the case for every single person. So this is the other thing. You know, some of you, we are understanding that for a lot of people, this is the case, but there's different sources of inflammation for different people. But for a good majority, the home is in the gut. And one of the mechanisms we're learning about how that works is that when there's damage to the gut intestinal lining, a condition called leaky gut, which you all know about if you watched the summit. And what happens is the bacteria that live inside the digestive tract have, especially a grouping called gram-negative rods or gram-negative bacteria. They have their cell walls. They have this thing called lipopolysaccharides on their cell wall. And when there's a leaky gut, the bacteria slip into the body. And those lipopolysaccharides, or LPS, we call them, trigger inflammation and actually causes an autoimmune reaction against the LPS. And research has shown, especially in rheumatoid arthritis, that little pieces of that bacteria cell wall, the LPS, ends up inside the joints in people. And they've even taken rats and animals and taken healthy rats and give them this bacterial cell wall components and LPS, and they put it into their bloodstream and they develop arthritis. So we know there is a connection between this lipopolysaccharide triggering systemic inflammation. So yes, I agree with that. Then there's the question of lectins. And I'm sure as I go through, there's going to be all these questions of, can we eat lectins? And what are lectins? Lectins are sort of irritating compounds that are found in certain foods. So grains are very rich. All plants have lectins, first of all. It's what the plant uses to fight its own pesticides. It's a natural irritant that the plant has. And so, thank you. Oh, hi, Misty. And so the lectins are natural irritating things. And so irritating substances in the plant. And so, but all plants have lectins and some have more than others. In large amounts, lectins can be very damaging to the gut lining. And so lectins are something that if we, Nancy, hi, I'm glad you can hear me. So lectins can be very damaging. And the foods that have the most lectins are grains and legumes. But all plants do, all vegetables do. And one of the ways you can reduce the lectins in, for example, in legumes is by soaking them and sprouting them and cooking them. And that reduces the lectins a lot. And so if your gut is really damaged, okay, Misty wants me to address the scleroderma community. So welcome to everyone that's following me from the scleroderma family. I follow you all on Facebook too. Now, people with scleroderma, arthritis as a whole, right? Inflammatory arthritis, which is what we're talking about, osteoarthritis, as well as arthritis from autoimmune diseases. People with autoimmune disease, systemic autoimmune diseases like scleroderma, the ANA positive autoimmune diseases, you can often have inflammatory arthritis as one of the symptoms. It's not uncommon. And so the approach that we're talking about in the summit, as well as that I'm talking about here, and I'm answering questions and that I really dig into in my book, this whole idea about, yes, you have to figure out the food, and I'm sure that we will talk a lot about that. And yes, you have to heal your gut. And then with other autoimmune diseases, there's toxins, and with arthritis also, depending on your history, you might have to address the whole toxicity and the infectious disease kind of triggers. I also wrote another book called The Immune System Recovery Plan. And in 2013, I wrote my first book. That's what it was. And it's still a great book. I'm really proud of that book. And we talk about how to heal the immune system. And that's where I really dig into the whole toxins and infectious disease piece. For arthritis, what I've learned after all these years since I wrote that book, and even, all these years, is the research has shown this connection between the gut arthritis connection has really sort of blown out of the water. And that's why, like that person who asked the question about Dr. Gundry, this is what's happening. Damage to the gut causes a leaky gut, and then this lipopolysaccharide from the bacteria slip into the body and trigger inflammation. So I do agree with it. But I want to finish my little statement about lectins. I do not espouse for everybody. See, I also believe in personalized nutrition. Everybody here that's listening, you have to figure out the best food plan for yourself. If you have a really damaged gut, some people, have really severe arthritis, really damaged gut, and for a period of time, you might have trouble tolerating lectins. And you might have to restrict all grains, and you might have to do more of an autoimmune paleo kind of approach. I generally limit the amounts of grains. I definitely gluten-free grains for sure, and I recommend limiting them. But I generally see if people want to try having a little bit and they can tolerate it, I usually do start there. So I'm not as much anti-lectin, like get all the lectins out right now. But with some of my patients, and you might find that's you, if you do a basic sort of leaky gut diet, which is an elimination diet, and take out sort of the classic nightshades and sort of the irritating foods from your system, you might find that you will also feel better eliminating all grains, and for some people, legumes as well. But that is not, I don't do that automatically with everybody. So you can reduce the lectins, though, in legumes by, like I said, boiling them and soaking them and sprouting. I love sprouted lentils. I eat them all summer long. All right, so that was one of the questions. Next question, if you have RA and you eat foods or take supplements to boost your immune system, does it cause your body to attack your joints more? That is a great question. And the reason it's a great question is because it's actually a very sophisticated question, because what you're asking is, in the typical view of autoimmunity, the typical view is that the immune system is so fired up that the goal is to shut it off, and that's the solution. And whereas when you take the question, how I interpreted that is, if you have Epstein-Barr virus or another virus and you want to take mushrooms or like echinacea or one of those like immune boosting supplements, is it okay to do that? And the answer is complicated. And actually in my immune book, I sort of deferred and said, don't take any of those things. But in all practicality, though, in practice, and this is going to get a little complicated, so stick with me and try to follow this. In something, it depends on the autoimmune disease. So in RA, so there's different kinds of dominant autoimmune diseases. There's something we call Th2 dominant and Th1 dominant. Th2 dominant autoimmune diseases are shifted towards making too many antibodies. And RA tends to be a little bit of RA tends to be a little bit of both, which is makes it tricky. It's a little shifted towards Th2, which means you're making too many antibodies. And when you shift towards Th2, you're actually underproducing Th1, which are the natural killers. And so people with the Th2 more autoimmune conditions like lupus and scleroderma and Sjogren's and polymyositis and dermatomyositis, all these sort of ANA dominant sort of autoimmune diseases in general, I do give those people immune support. And I feel comfortable doing that because I know I'm supporting their Th1 system, which is, by science tells us, is sort of weak. And so I would say that if you have for RA, so if we're talking about arthritis today, which we are, if you have an autoimmune condition and inflammatory arthritis, if you have Sjogren's or scleroderma or lupus or one of those, you can pretty safely take mushrooms or natural killer booster kind of supplements. If you have a Th2, which is more like a Hashimoto's or an organ-specific autoimmune disease, I generally don't recommend that. And unfortunately for rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic, the jury's a little out of, it's a little bit of a mixed Th2, Th1, but I think it's more of a Th2 because we tend to make a lot more antibodies, So I think that for short periods of time, you'd probably be okay doing that. So that was a little complicated, but I hope that helps. So Nancy just asked, I would like to know if you have anyone listening with PMR that has successfully results without taking steroids. So polymyalgia rheumatica is it's a very intense sort of, nobody knows how it begins, but it's an inflammatory condition that it's an autoimmune condition that where you have certain, sometimes the large joints are involved. It could be any joint really, but it's muscle and joint that gets involved. And so, yeah, sometimes steroids are usually used right away. And then my goal is to help you get off steroids as quickly as you can. But it's still the same thing. I have several people with PMR in my practice. And the goal is to still what we're talking about here. If you need steroids right away to get everything under control, I'm an integrative doctor. Sometimes we need conventional medicine if you're in a flare or things are bad or when you first get going. You need to do that. But then you jump right away into let's find and treat the root cause of the inflammation. And so we work right away with food. So it's really an elimination diet where you clean out all of the sugar and alcohol and gluten, dairy, soy, corn, eggs. I take away the nightshades, which are tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, peppers, and I always start there. If that food plan doesn't help, or if you have severe digestive issues, bloating and reflux and a lot of noisy tummy and SIBO kind of symptoms, sometimes I do restrict all grains and sometimes legumes as well. So you sort of clear out all these inflammatory foods, and then we get to work healing the gut, which is really the focus. if you have arthritis that you need to focus on, especially in the world of rheumatoid arthritis and the inflammatory arthritis, autoimmune conditions. 100% you dig into the gut. And if you have osteoarthritis, you're here too, okay? There's really good research looking at all arthritis and how it's connected to the gut. And just because there was a question about, there's a question about, I was reading through all the questions and somebody asked a question about, I have injuries and I have osteoarthritis and, you know, can I run? You know, there was somebody that asked me a question about running, and so I'm going to bop back and forth between osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis because you're all here, and I don't want to sort of damage anything. Oh, here it is. I'm curious about this. Is there actually evidence on X-ray, MRI that shows anatomical joint changes structurally after you feel improvement in your arthritis pain? I'm curious about this because I'm a runner and a physical therapist. 5 years ago, I had to stop running because my knees hurt so much. I had previous knee arthroscopic surgeries. Now, after making diet changes, right? Did you hear that? After making diet changes, I can run again. I did a half marathon. I'm so happy. I have read conflicting info about whether to keep running with osteoarthritis, but opt to do it for my own happiness. I run on dirt and trails because it feels better. Do you recommend people should stop running when X-rays show osteoarthritis? Okay, here's the thing. Two people with the same exact X-rays, you put them up on the wall and one person might have pain and the other person doesn't. So damage to the joint. So as we age, we're all going to have wear and tear. But wear and tear is different from inflammation in the joint, which is called arthritis, right? Arthritis is the inflammation. And so Nancy, was it, your name, actually, sorry, I don't know what I actually cleared away the name. So the person who wrote in about the running, yes, you can still run because you've already figured out that by changing your diet, you already were able to reduce the inflammation in your body so your knees don't hurt. And so you have to find all the sources of inflammation. And for a lot of you, it very likely can be food. The other thing is, though, research has really showed us that the gut is, again, even with osteoarthritis, you have to make sure you have a healthy gut. And the number one most important influence on a healthy gut, to have a healthy gut, is the food you're eating. So the food you're eating, and that's why you take out a lot of those inflammatory foods or even the sugar and eat a lot of vegetables. I mean, a plant-based diet, at the end of the day, I'm not anti-animal, but really 70% of your food should come from plants, you know, from vegetables. And that's how you feed the microbes in your gut and help them flourish and be really healthy. So chances are, once you have really severe damage to your joints on an X-ray, it's not going to change. You're going to still, that X-ray is always going to look the same, but you don't always have to have pain. I agree with adjusting and not pounding the pavement and perhaps running on dirt and making sure your sneakers are good and all of that, and do what you can. But there's no reason that you need to live in pain. And so that's what we're really talking about here. Let's see. So the next question here, let me take one from the audience. So is eliminating caffeine essential for healing RA? You know, this is everybody struggles with the coffee thing. I would say, again, I always invite, this is this thing we call an elimination diet. Think of it like an experiment. My goal is always to help you figure out how you feel off of caffeine. So it's really just for the first 2 to 3 weeks of a program. I mean, the question to you is, can you go 3 weeks without coffee? Can you go 2 weeks without coffee? And what would it be like to remove it from your diet and see how you feel? I don't know if it's going to affect your joints or not. You're going to tell me. And so that's why we do this experiment. And that's what an elimination diet, this name, and I call it in step 1 of my book, the leaky gut diet for arthritis, because you have a leaky gut if you have arthritis. Foods you're eating are triggering symptoms. They just are. And so you need to remove certain foods until you heal your gut. And then down the road, 6 months, a year later, you will likely find a lot of those foods you'll be able to eat in small amounts. Not all of them. Some of them might be permanent. You might find just don't really make their way back into your food. But a lot of them will, because once your gut is healed, the food and those the bacteria, you know, lipopolysaccharide, it won't be slipping into your body anymore and triggering inflammation. And so that's the thing about caffeine. So I think everybody should. I sort of go in and out when I stop. I only do one little shot of organic espresso in the morning. And I have to say that, it's a drug. I love it, and I really look forward to it. I make my green tea, and then I go sit on my cushion and meditate for 20 minutes, and then I go have my little shot of espresso. Now, when I go off of it, which I do periodically, I have to tell you, I sleep. I know I do. I sleep better. I feel more rested. I'm a little, my staff might say I'm a little less irritable, but there's a little mellowness that sort of takes over me, and I could feel it. But then I have a big day of work to do. I have to do a lot of writing. I'm like, I'm having coffee again, and there I go. And it's, as my husband would say, you want to use the caffeine and not have the caffeine use you. So there you go. All right. So let's see. Somebody somebody wrote in, I've changed my diet. My blood test shows no inflammation. However, I still have pain in muscles and joints. Any advice? Well, it's time to heal your gut. And then we're back to the gut. The gut arthritis connection, there's evidence. The research tells us, and the studies are really fascinating because they also show that when you heal your gut, they took arthritis patients, really, and they treated them with probiotics. And they didn't even do a great gut healing program like we do in functional medicine. And they gave probiotics to people with rheumatoid arthritis, and the pain went down, their inflammatory markers went down, and people felt better, quality of life. And that's just from taking probiotics. And their microbiome changed. And that's the same thing with the food, which is really why I sort of recommend a more balanced way of eating, because the studies that look at food and arthritis really focus on the Mediterranean diet, because it's rich in polyphenols, it's rich in fiber, it's rich in really good fats. Mediterranean diet is filled with olive oil, nuts and seeds, fish. It's not big on animal. It's not big on dairy. It doesn't say 100% you can't have it, but it's limited in the Mediterranean diet. And so the kinds of fats, it's rich in the colorful fruits and vegetables and fruit, and that. Okay, let's do another question. If treating both SIBO and RA, which do you treat first, or can they be treated at one time? What type of diet and supplements are important to use for both conditions? Can SIBO cause RA and vice versa? Okay, so, well, I can't see you all raise your hand, but I'm going to assume that most of you do not know what SIBO is. So I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you in terms of inflammation, right? SIBO is a term it means small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. SIBO is, so what that means is that, you have 100 trillion bacteria in your gut. Normally 90% is supposed to live in the colon, and 10% is supposed to live in the small intestine. But all the bacteria live in your small and large intestine, but majority large intestine. Under certain circumstances, and we can talk about how that happens, although we might not have time today for that. I actually think I did go to my YouTube channel. I did so many Facebook Lives, and I talked about SIBO. We did a whole one on SIBO. So the person asking about SIBO should go over there. But so under certain circumstances, the bacteria could pile up in the small intestine and overgrow. And that's called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. People with SIBO have bloating after eating, a lot of reflux, noisy, gurgly tummy, sometimes constipation, sometimes diarrhea, but definitely a lot of gut symptoms. And so if you have SIBO, you need to treat it. And here's why, because SIBO can cause a leaky gut. And so that overgrowth of bacteria can impair your whole digestive tract. What we're talking about, right? It's a kind of dysbiosis, a kind of imbalance in the microbes. And so when it comes to RA, I test all my arthritis patients. Always, I do stool testing. And if you have a lot of digestive symptoms, I send out a SIBO breath test as well. And I always treat it. So can SIBO cause RA? Sure. Can RA cause SIBO? Probably not that way. So any imbalance you discover you have in your gut, you have to assume it's one of the foundational problems that you're having, and you need to treat it. I treat SIBO with herbs, and I treat the gut. My gut healing program always starts with sort of a gut cleanse, which is herbs that sort of They're herbal antibiotics. You think of it like you're cleansing or you're weeding the garden. You know, we're pruning the inner garden. And so we're cleaning out the overgrowth of bad bacteria. We're cleaning out overgrowth of too much of even the good bacteria and candida. And so I have a great gut cleanse program. I call it the Heal My Gut program on my website. So I have a website, blumhealthmd.com, that you can go to. And if you're ready to heal your gut, you can just jump right in and do that. I also, by the way, I don't know if you can also, by the way, I have a great book that came out last week. So it's called Healing Arthritis. And of course, I'm looking around. I'm such a bad promoter. I'm supposed to really share my things. And I didn't even bring, do I have my book here? No. You know, I came over here to my desk and I didn't even bring a copy of my book to show you. But my book, Healing Arthritis, is out this week. And I explain to you how to heal the gut. So that's the thing about SIBO. All right, let's see. In case I missed it, how strong is the link between arthritis and Epstein-Barr virus? Ooh, that's another whole topic. Context, A Leap of Faith in the Medical Medium books by Anthony William. Yes, I'm familiar with that. So I'm not going to dig too much. I'm not going to dig too much into Epstein-Barr, but what I will say is that there is definitely a connection between some other infections and rheumatoid arthritis. Epstein-Barr is not so much itself implicated as the main infection for rheumatoid arthritis, but Epstein-Barr is important for autoimmunity in general, and definitely for the ANA positive autoimmune diseases. So when somebody has and of course, all my scleroderma people listening, you know, a positive ANA, I go looking for Epstein-Barr virus. I definitely always test for it. And, but it's not so much. So I do test for it in everyone, but it's not number one for me for rheumatoid arthritis. But if somebody has persistent fatigue, and if somebody has a low white count, and somebody has a positive ANA, I always go looking for Epstein-Barr. And so, and here's the thing I will say about the medical medium book that talks about Epstein-Barr virus as the main thing that's the plague that's causing every disease. If you read something where somebody says to you, this is the cause in every single person, you know, run for the hills. And I'm not saying that's in Naka's book. Epstein-Barr virus is likely the trigger for a lot of autoimmune disease. And it's a likely trigger. It can be a trigger for Hashimoto's, thyroiditis. It goes into the thyroid gland. So Epstein-Barr is a big problem. And I'm working with a lot of people with chronic active Epstein-Barr in my practice right now. But I do not believe that everybody has the same cause. Did you hear that? Now listen to that. You all listening you might all have arthritis. You do not all have the exact same cause. And so, but what's happening is a lot of different causes of inflammation have a final common pathway that's ending up in your joints. And so your symptoms are the same, but how you got there is all different. And so in functional medicine, what we do is we make our whole list of all the places to look. And you start just going through your checklist and you check off one at a time. And what I will say is that, you know, that for everybody, food is important. And so my goal is to guide you to figure out your food plan that's going to help you. And you have to figure out your anti-inflammatory diet. There's a food plan that's anti-inflammatory for you, and you have to figure it out. And that's my goal in steering you in my book, Healing Arthritis. That's how I work. That's how we work, right? Helping you figure it out. And then everybody has to heal their gut. Now, there might be something else going on as well. And so, for example, let's say there's people out there where Epstein-Barr virus is important. How do you get rid of Epstein-Barr virus? You have to heal the gut, because 70% of the immune system lies in the intestinal lining. And so a healthy gut is a healthy immune system. A healthy gut means lower inflammation. So in order to help your immune system, we're filled with viruses and we're filled with infections. And in order to you have to think of it, they're always going to be living in your body. And so you have to put those viruses in remission. The goal is to, help your immune system do a better job getting rid of those viruses. And Epstein-Barr virus is a perfect example. The Epstein virus is going to go deep into your body, and you're going to It's going to go dormant and not bother you. You're never going to clear it out. I never had mono, and I tested positive for Epstein-Barr. And so we all have it, 95% of the population. But under certain circumstances, it can rise up and make us sick. And that's because the immune system isn't doing a good job. And so to have a healthy immune system, you have to heal your gut. So if you have arthritis, we're still back to the gut again. And that's really why I wrote the book. And that's why I did the summit. Because I wanted you to understand in the past 5 years, the literature is just exploded with information about how the gut, it's not just that we now know the gut is involved, but now we know how. We know the mechanism, and that goes back to the first question someone asked about lipopolysaccharide and how you get arthritis. The other really important thing, which I hope you learned from the summit, is about the oral microbiome, right? And so a lot of inflammation can come from the joints, from the mouth. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to go over to, oh, hi, Michelle. I'm going to go over to the questions people are going in right now. What is left for me to eat to heal my gut? This is from Mary Ann. If I have a histamine intolerance and so many probiotic foods are high in histamine, oh boy, yeah, Mary Ann, that's really hard. So really, we have to. I'm sorry. Yes, some of our people live on a very restrictive food plan at first. And so there's some tricks to working with histamine. I have a great nutritionist in my office. Her name is Mary Goki, and she takes care of my histamine people really, really well. And so you do have to go on a low histamine diet at first. But as you heal your gut and do the gut work, you will be able to tolerate more foods, I promise you. But you will also have to you have to do some food allergy testing, and there's all sorts of things we need to do to make sure your histamine system in the body is working. You know, histamine has to be degraded by methylation, so B12 folate. There's all sorts of things that we need to do to help histamine. So you might want to, reach out to my coach on my website, blumhealthmd.com. If you submit to the support button, Melissa, our health coach, might be able to steer you over to Mary, our nutritionist, who's great at working with histamine. So not everybody can just do it through a book. Some people need extra help, and you might be one of them. So Jessica asked, how do you go after finding the cause of inflammation infection with a persistently high HSCRP? Despite mildly ketogenic, no sugar, no grain, no dairy diet. Poor you. Okay, decades-long chronic illness, migratory morning joint muscle pains, HLA-B27 positive. So, and you have mold and sears, and I am sorry to hear what you've been going through. So some people have genetics that are really, that you struggle. Like with certain genetics, it is such a struggle. And these kinds of mold and Lyme and other infections, your body just can't rally itself to fight it. And so that's really tough. HLA-B27 is a gene that's associated with ankylosing spondylitis. And so you have, and it sort of is mean that you're at the root, you sort of do have a susceptibility to inflammation. I don't know. I can't really. So Jessica, I'm not sure that I know how to direct you other than to say, in functional medicine, we go through the checklist, and here it is: food, stress and hormones, gut health, toxins, and infections. And you work your way through the list. And so I could see you're doing all the food stuff, but here, this is the really important point. Food is so important, but for most of you, food is not enough. You have to do food, but then you have to move on to the other things. So you have to get an assessment of your stress system, what's happening with your cortisol and your whole stress system. You have to heal your gut. And so for those of you with inflammatory arthritis, you already know, and Jessica, if you have inflammation in your muscles and joints, you know that you have some sort of gut inflammation and dysbiosis, leaky gut. So healing the gut, that's where you go. So you go to the gut. If you know you have a big history of exposure to toxins, mold, mycotoxins like you have to find someone. If you have mycotoxins, Jill Carnahan gave a fabulous talk on the Arthritis Summit, all about mold mycotoxins and what to do and how to work with that. I would really send you to a practitioner. We have a great person in my office. Her name is Elizabeth Gregg, who does all of our mold people. I mean, I work with mold too, like we all do, but she particularly loves doing working with complex mold cases. And so you might really need a practitioner to help you. Where you live, you can go to the functional medicine website, ifm.org, and find a practitioner and try to find someone to help you. But we work our way through food, stress, gut, toxins, infections, and I outlined that in my first book, The Immune System Recovery Plan. But I wrote a second book for arthritis people because of all the research about the gut arthritis connection, and that healing the gut actually improves pain and inflammation in the joints. And there are studies which show it, which I review in the book. So Jessica, I hope you feel better, but if you haven't done any healing of your gut, babe, you got to do it. All right. So that's really important. So one question about tomatoes and nightshades. Tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, and peppers have the family Solanaceae. It's actually there's a compound in there that's particularly irritating to the joints. And so I always tell people, take all of this is part of the leaky gut diet for arthritis at the beginning, take them out, see how you feel. Then you can reintroduce them one at a time to see whether they trigger any symptoms. So tomatoes for some people are a big problem, and for others it's not. So you have to see for yourself if it's for you. Now I'm gonna do one more question because it's a big one that just came in, and it really, I think, is important for us to address. And so the question was about Lyme disease. Can Lyme disease cause RA or other autoimmune disease? Now, this is where I think it's really important, and this is the whole first section of my book is about what kind of arthritis do you have. You need to figure out what kind of arthritis you have. And it's really important that you rule out Lyme. And so I do a lot of testing for Lyme disease in my practice. I tend to send the blood to Lyme specialty labs just to make sure that we don't miss it. Lyme has a history and a pattern, and usually, and so I would refer you to my book, to the book's called Healing Arthritis, and I really would refer you there because I explain to you the different joints, different kinds of arthritis, different joints are affected, depending on where you live and depending on also your other symptoms. Lyme disease itself doesn't cause rheumatoid arthritis, in my opinion. But Lyme disease can cause arthritis that could mimic rheumatoid arthritis. On an X-ray, and the way to tell is you do X-rays. On an X-ray, you can tell what kind of arthritis you have. Rheumatoid arthritis looks one way because there's a synovitis, there's an inflammation in the synovium that's different than you have in Lyme, and that's different than you have in osteoarthritis. So you actually, sometimes you can judge it from blood testing, but you can also figure out what kind of arthritis you have from going to your doctor and asking them to do an X-ray. And the X-ray or an MRI of the joint will tell you there's very specific features that help you know what kind of arthritis you have. And so, recovering Lyme, I hear you. So Lyme is really, really tough. And I have a lot of people that we're struggling to know whether or not we really are finished treating the Lyme, or if the Lyme is really still is a part here. And because sometimes a virus, this is also really important. Sometimes viruses can trigger a positive Lyme test. And so you have to have someone experienced that sort of knows how to sort that out. And so it's really important to make sure you don't have an infection, because that gets treated in one way. And then if it looks like it's rheumatoid arthritis, and like I said, rheumatoid arthritis has a very specific pattern. It's usually in the hands and feet. There are X-rays that can tell you whether you have it or not. And usually there's positive blood tests. If your blood tests aren't positive, sometimes you're given a diagnosis of seronegative, which just means blood test negative rheumatoid arthritis, and your doctor tells you you're going to have RA someday. But I'm here, actually, I love people that walk into my office and say, I have seronegative RA and my doctor wants to give me medication. And I think, you have your first joint pain ever. You don't have any positive blood tests. This is the best time to do functional medicine. Let's heal your gut and get you on an anti-inflammatory diet and work with stress, and you're going to feel a lot better, and your joint pain is going to go away. And in fact, that happens. And so early arthritis is the best time to to practice root cause medicine, to treat the root cause. Okay, so RA is autoimmune. Lyme triggers autoimmunity. Yes, Susie, I know that's true. The Lyme autoimmunity, it's very common to see a positive ANA. So when I see a positive ANA, which is just an autoimmune marker, I go looking for infectious triggers, especially if there's no rheumatic disease that's associated with it. So all Lyme definitely triggers autoimmunity. And it can trigger really systemic autoimmunity, like the kind of ANA positive lupus and Hashimoto's and that kind of stuff. So infections definitely trigger autoimmunity. But to know whether or not you have Lyme versus RA, you want to do an X-ray. And in the literature, and I'm just talking about in the research as of right now, and then when I wrote the book, so I did all the research for the book probably in 2016, there aren't many studies showing Lyme as a cause of RA when you look at all the studies on RA. But there's definitely other infections. There's Prevotella and there's Mycoplasma and Proteus, and there's other bacterial infections that are common from the gut. So there's bacteria and infectious organisms that we've associated with RA that come from other places, like I said, Proteus and Prevotella in the gut, Mycoplasma, which you can get Mycoplasma as a pneumonia, and Mycoplasma can end up in the joints. There's parvovirus, there's all sorts of viruses that you can get inflammatory arthritis from, but those are different arthritis conditions. Parvovirus is different. It's self-limiting. It'll be done in 6 weeks. Anyway, so that's that. So, oh, hey, Wesley. Oh, my niece is on. Good to see you, babe. And so tendinitis, mommy's thumb. So what's arthritis? Arthritis is pain, swelling, redness, and heat. So just feeling a little stiff is not arthritis. Redness, swelling, pain, and heat in a joint, that's arthritis. And if you have redness, pain, swelling, and heat in any of your fingers or your thumbs or any of your joints, your wrists, and you can see it and it hurts, you should go to the doctor and have them help you figure out what kind of arthritis you have. It's important because it's important to know, because even though I'm telling you we're going to treat all the arthritis the same way, you want to be able to follow it. You want to know how severe it is. You want to get the blood tests. You want to really know, because it's important to keep track of how you're doing by following those tests. And so if you have any kind of beginning weird, your own arthritis that you realized and you think it's arthritis, you have to definitely work on your food and you have to work on healing your gut. So I'm going to repeat the foods once more. You can find them online. Yes. So the first simple food plan to start with is gluten, dairy, soy, corn, eggs. And you know what? Yes, you can find it online. You can find it. My book, Healing Arthritis, a book is very easy it's the simplest, most easily accessible way to learn about a program is to get a book. In Healing Arthritis, the whole first step is all about the food plan. It's called the Leaky Gut Diet for Arthritis. Gluten, dairy, soy, corn, eggs. But it's not about what you're pulling out. It's of course there are these foods. It's an experiment you're going to take out, but it's also about what to focus on. All the gut healing foods, the colors, the vegetables, the fermented foods and healthy fat and all the good fat and a class of foods called polyphenols. And so yeah, and if you have arthritis, definitely take out the Nightshades for a couple of weeks and see what you think and see if they're triggering arthritis for you. Well, I think I'm going to wrap things up. We're just about, let's see, we've been talking for about 45 minutes. I really appreciate everybody coming and joining me today. Here's the thing. I am going to continue this. We're going to do it every week. So next Thursday, I'm going to be back. And what's going to happen is I'm going to send out an email. So make sure you sign up for our email list if you haven't already. You can go to this, just like our Facebook post, you're all fans of the Facebook page if you're here. And so we'll put up and we'll send out a notice to, you can follow a link in the email that is going to, it dumps the questions into a Google Doc for me. And so I collected a lot of questions, and I actually think we talked about a lot of them. And so, you know what, I guess I'll do one more. Okay, here I am, I just can't seem to get enough, right? But one more question. Dr. Blum, is your new book focused on all forms of arthritis or mainly rheumatoid arthritis? Does it also cover fibromyalgia? I suffer with osteoarthritis, and many of my health coach clients suffer with fibromyalgia. So I do not focus on fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia doesn't generally have arthritis with it, but it sometimes does. It's more of a muscle condition. I definitely focus on osteoarthritis. And so the book covers all forms of arthritis, no matter what kind it has, and it helps you figure out what kind of arthritis you have as well. I review all the research on osteoarthritis as well. And I'll give you one little tidbit about, in terms of osteoarthritis. Well, there's so much, you know what, there's so much information in the book. I could go on and on and on, but we talk a lot about oxidative stress and needing more antioxidants, which is important for both. And we talk about too much body fat, you know, and this visceral adipose tissue and its relationship to osteoarthritis. But it's also an important trigger for inflammation as well for rheumatoid arthritis. So we cover all of that. Healing your gut and eating an anti-inflammatory diet is going to help your fibromyalgia patients as well. And so what I would say to you, especially since you're a health coach, start with yourself. If you have osteoarthritis and you have inflammation and pain, follow the program for yourself, see if it works, and then you share it with others. You know, you always work on yourself first, and then you can share what you're doing with other people. And from firsthand experience, you can be very enthusiastic about how it helped you. Maybe next time we'll talk more about detox. You know, there's a lot of detox just means that your body's filled with, that some people have a high toxin load and it might be triggering inflammation. And so I'm going to leave that for another time. We're sort of out of time today, but toxins are important, especially, you know, when you have to sit and think about yourself and where you do your own history, right? And actually in my first book, The Immune System Recovery Plan, I do a lot of self-assessments. And so I sit and I talk to my new patients for 2 hours, and I want to know your whole timeline. And if you know yourself and you think about whether or not you've had a high toxin exposure, you have to figure out for yourself if you think toxins are important. And so some people have a lot of toxin exposure. So when people come in, I decide right away, are you a gut person? Or are you a toxin person? Are you an infection person, right? Because these are all the places we're going to look for the sources of inflammation. And my arthritis patients really tend to be gut people, but often there's a history of a lot of toxin exposure, whether it's, you know, a lot of herbicides, pesticides, or maybe even it's something like, my artists, for example, you know, people who do art and they paint and they're exposed to fumes and solvents, or people that eat a lot of fish, you know, a lot of big fish eaters, and I measure the mercury and it's really high. And so you can sort of get history like that. And so sometimes we do have to address toxins. I'm going to leave that for next time. Okay, well, it's been a long day for me. I saw patients all day, and then I came here to talk to you guys, and I'm so happy to have this opportunity to really debrief almost after the Arthritis Summit. There's a lot of really great information, and I promise I'll keep coming back and answering questions. I'm also working on creating and launching an arthritis course that I'm going to run after the new year. So stay tuned for that, and it'll really be a course that we'll do together that'll take you through the steps in the book. And so I'm putting that together right now, so stay tuned. And there's a lot of resources that I've offered that I really have for you in order to help you, you know, heal your arthritis. And so here are your options. You can buy the book, which of course I recommend. So it's called Healing Arthritis. I have a really great website called healingarthritisthebook.com. And on healingarthritisthebook.com, I'm giving you all these. I have videos, and there's a lot of bonus gifts. So if you bought your book or you buy the book, you can go there and claim a whole lot of gifts, and including like discounts to the programs on my website and some really cool stuff. So you can go there, and you can start there, you know. And then, of course, you can always ask questions through our support button on the BlumHealthMD.com website. And so It was great spending Thursday night with you all. Thank you for joining me in the Arthritis Summit. That was so great for me too. I learned so much from all my friends and colleagues, and it was really a great experience. And I'm glad to hear. I've heard so many wonderful thank yous from all of you. So I really appreciate that. It was a totally labor of love, and I'm really glad that you all enjoyed it as much as I did. So until next time, enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening. I'm Dr. Susan Blum, and thank you for joining me tonight, and I will see you all next Thursday night. And don't forget to leave me questions, and we will answer them. Have a good night.